Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing, as you can see in front of you, the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 9mm. And the reason I have two of them in front of me is because they are slightly different. They're basically the exact same gun with one difference. This one here in the middle has a thumb safety, which will disengage the trigger, and the other one does not have that. Now, this trigger, as you can see, both of these have the same trigger. On the tip there, it has this little built-in safety. It's actually this little curved tip part. Basically, if you don't properly pull that tip back, it won't fire. So that is actually considered a safety. Before we begin, we're going to go ahead and make sure that these guns are safe to handle. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and take the magazines out of each firearm, making sure to keep our fingers completely away from the trigger, because that is how accidents happen. These firearms will fire without the magazine in them. There are some guns, such as the Ruger SR22, that will not fire without the magazines, but these will. So just because the magazines are out does not mean that they are safe. So what we're going to do is we're going to rack the gun a time or two to make sure that there's nothing in it, and then we're going to lock the slide back. Now, visually, we're always going to look inside the firing chamber to see, is there anything inside there? This one has nothing, so this one is now safe. So we're going to set that guy down, locked open. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to rack it a couple times, and then we're going to lock it back to make sure that there is no ammunition inside there. Again, we're going to look inside to make sure it is clear and nothing inside there. So we are good. Now, we're going to do a quick little talk about the magazines, and then we're going to set them off to the side because I hate having live ammunition anywhere near firearms that I am handling. Each gun, when you purchase it, will come with two magazines. One of them is an 8-round capacity, and one of them is a 7-round. Now, you'll notice that the 8-round is a little bit longer, and they have this little plastic piece on here that basically extends the grip of the firearm. I personally like these because when you're shooting, you get that extra little half-inch of gap on the pistol, which kind of lets me get my pinky on there. A lot of these smaller firearms, I have a hard time trying to get all my fingers on there, so having that little extension piece on the 8-round magazine versus the 7-round is definitely a lot nicer. These magazines, there's really not much difference between them. They have the little windows on the side so you can actually see how many bullets are loaded into each magazine. But personally, I like the 8-round magazine, so I actually went out and purchased a couple extra so that when I'm carrying it, I can carry the 8 rounds rather than the 7. Now, this will also carry one in the chamber. If you want to do that, usually what you do is you load the round directly into the chamber itself, close the slide, and then put your magazine in. Now, you could also put the magazine in, rack around from that, and put an extra one back in there, but honestly, I like just putting it directly into the barrel itself. Now, that's pretty much all there is to be said about the magazines. With that said, I'm now going to kind of take the magazines and put them off to the side so that they are far away from the firearms to make sure. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to stick them in the gun. I like not having them there. And before we do anything else, I do want to talk a little bit about ammunition. You see quite a few bullets here on the table. These ones on the right are 380s. These are actually 380 calibers. There's a full metal jacket, and there is a hollow point. And the reason I have these out is because I want to show you this size comparison between those and the 9mm. So the ones on the side over here are 9mm bullets. We've got 2 hollow points, and we've got a full metal jacket as well. So let me show you the hollow points side by side. I'm going to grab one 9mm and one 380. You can see that overall, they are almost identical. They are actually the same width. So you could put a 380 bullet into the barrel of a 9mm, and you could put a 9mm into the 380. Now, technically, the only difference is the 9mm is a little bit longer. So if you try to put a 9mm into a 380 pistol, it likely wouldn't seat properly, and it has more power, so if you were to actually try to fire that, it could damage your firearm, it could explode, and that would definitely not be good. So I would not recommend putting 9mm into a 380, and actually, if you try to put 380 into a 9mm, yes, it probably would fire, but it might not have enough force to properly cycle the gun. So again, when you're shooting firearms, make sure to shoot the stuff that is made for the gun. There's no reason that you shouldn't be putting the right calibers in there. Now that we're done kind of talking about that, I'm going to set those off to the side as well. When it comes to shooting ammo in these, I mean, there's really not much of a difference. I've got 3 different boxes here. In the center, I've got this value pack, which actually has a little throwback on it. Look at the price of this stuff. $29.99 for a box of 100 rounds. I mean, some of you guys are probably looking at that like, oh my God, I forgot ammo was actually that cheap. And it really was. This is a slightly older box of ammo that I have. I mean, $30, it's 30 cents a round. I mean, the last I checked, everyone's still trying to sell them for 70, 80 cents. I mean, some people up over $1 a round, which is just absolutely crazy. Now, this is Full Metal Jacket. This is stuff that if you go to the range, you can shoot this stuff and not really feel too bad about breaking the bank, because it's not really stuff that you want to carry. While you could put this in your gun for carrying, it's not really the best choice because Full Metal Jacket's made for penetration, whereas when you're carrying, you'd rather get the hollow points because these things will stop usually in their first targets. The thing is, you don't want over penetration because if you're defending yourself, you don't want it to go through whoever you may be shooting and hit something behind that. So these Full Metal Jackets are great. I've cycled hundreds of them through these firearms, never had any issues. And I have put some hollow points through as well with no issue, but those are also a lot more expensive because they're made for self-protection. Usually I like to mix and match ammunition when it comes to stuff because you never know what you're going to be doing. So I have a mixture of different types of hollow points. Some of them are frangible, some of them are copper, some of them are brass casings, some of them are the nickel casings. And again, that's just my preference. There's no reason I do that. But you guys didn't really come here to see a huge video about ammunition. I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the stuff that you can put in there. But let's get onto the guns themselves, the reason you're here. The 2 firearms here are completely identical. I'm going to be showing you mostly the one with the attached thumb safety on the back of the gun. So if you don't know how the thumb safety works, it's really simple. You just push it up with your thumb to engage it and pull it down to disengage. I'm going to pull the slide back and put it into firing position, and I'm going to show you how this slide lock works. So right now, if you push it up, the firearm cannot be fired. So if I pull the trigger, it's locked. Now that is a physical safety that stops you from pulling the trigger. Some people feel comfortable with these. A lot of people think that, oh, well, I want to carry around in the chamber, but I don't want it to go off. Well, most modern firearms are built so that that won't happen. You can drop them, and there's pretty much no way you can get these things to fire unless you physically pull that trigger all the way back, which is why some people like to have the extra added safety on the back. But me personally, imagine that you are in a scenario where you have to use this firearm. You draw it, and you go to pull the trigger, and nothing happens. And you're going to spend a few seconds panicking like, what the heck? What's going on? And in those few seconds, if the person that you're pulling a firearm on has a firearm of their own, you could now be dead. Now, if you practice with them enough, you will get used to the safety, so you know how to flick it off and pull the trigger. But if you don't practice enough and you have that safety, it could stop the firearm from working. And in the heat of the moment, like right now, you're probably like, oh, how hard is it to pull the trigger and put the safety off? Like, sure, when you're calm, cool, collected, it's easy to remember this stuff. But in the heat of the moment, your adrenaline's going to be pumping, and you're going to have no idea why the trigger's not working. You're going to squeeze it as hard as you can, and it's just not going to work. So personally, I do not like to have that. Some people do like to have that. I just have both of them because I wanted to show the difference. Earlier on the trigger, I was saying that the trigger itself is a safety. You can see that the tip of it kind of moves differently than the rest of the body. If you tried to pull on the top part, it's not going to let you pull it back. You have to depress that tip as well. So that is kind of a built-in safety with this gun. A lot of people don't feel comfortable with that, but you have to remember that these guns take kind of a lot of pressure to fire. You have to pull that trigger all the way back, and it is a long, hard pull. So you'd have to have something in your pocket that could wedge itself in between the trigger and the frame and get pulled back far enough that it's gonna somehow fire the gun. It's unlikely, it's not impossible. I mean, everything is technically possible, but most modern firearms have enough safety built-ins that you should be feeling pretty comfortable with the firearm itself. Enough about the safety and the safeties and other things like that. Let's kind of talk about just some of the ergonomics of the gun. The gun itself is not all that heavy. It's got a little bit of weight to it, but it's not as heavy as some of the larger frame firearms that I own. The bottom is a polymer, and that helps it to reduce weight. So if it was metal, it'd be a lot heavier, And you can see it kind of seems like it's a little off kilter right now. It seems like the top half where the slide is a little bit heavier. But that's because there's no magazine in here. If we put a magazine in there, it would balance it, but obviously I don't want to do that, because if you do that, now the firearm is technically ready to fire, and that's when accidents happen. But if you do put that magazine in there, it does balance it quite nicely, and it's got a decent amount of weight. You could carry it in your pocket. It's not going to weigh down your pants, and if it does, you just need to wear a belt or something, and that's just common sense. But the firearm itself, it feels very nice. It has a decent amount of weight to it, but it's not too heavy, and I could carry this thing all day in my pocket and completely forget that it's there, which is nice. It's a nice size. It's also small enough to fit in most pockets. Like, I've never had any issue putting it in my pocket. As you can see on the side over here, I've got a holster, which is plastic. This is actually technically an inside the waistband holster. I'll show you how this thing fits in here. When the gun is ready, you just place it inside there. It just snaps in like that. There's no buttons or anything to take it out. You just kind of pull it and it comes out. It just fit in there with a little bit of pressure. Like I said, this one's for tucking inside your waistband, and this is a great option, but a lot of people don't like tucking inside their waistband, so another option is getting one of these holsters here, a little paddle holster. And this thing, you could put it right inside your pocket. The gun fits nicely in there. And it's okay that the gun sticks out a little bit. The thing that it's protecting is the trigger. You cannot get to the trigger while it's in here. So if you're worried about carrying around in the chamber because you're afraid something might pull that trigger, well, something like this, you could have this in your pocket and there's almost no way something's going to get into that trigger well and pull the trigger with this on there. So this is a great option for carrying in your pocket. It's also got like a rubber coating on the outside of this, and it's got that little hook at the end so that as you're pulling out of your pocket, the rubber and that little hook kind of catch the edge of your pants, keep it in your pants, and that way you can pull the firearm out. So this is probably my most preferred method of carry. There's also waistband holsters and stuff, but like this one here is pretty much my go-to. I have quite a few different styles and sizes for different firearms, but even with this pedal holster on here, it still fits completely in my pocket. Again, it's compact enough that you still have all the space you need to be able to carry it without it being overwhelming. I have a large frame Glock, which I've reviewed in the past, and you can also check that out. There's going to be a link in the description. But the Glock is very big. It's very heavy and it's bulky. But this thing, I mean, you can see it's like as big as my hand. If you can fit your hand in your pocket, you can fit this gun in your pocket as well, which is one of the reasons why I liked picking it up. The magazine, going back to the magazines for a second, these are technically, they're not double stack magazines, but they're also not single stack. They're like stack and a half. I call them double stack. Some people call them something else. I forget the exact word for it, but basically it just means that the bullets, instead of being vertical, stacked one on top of each other, they're slightly offset from each other a little bit, so you can get those extra couple rounds in there. So having the 8-round magazine plus one in the chamber gives you 9 rounds. I have a Ruger LCP that I've also reviewed, and that one has 6 rounds plus one in the chamber, whereas this is 8 plus 1. So those extra 2 rounds, plus it's 9mm versus 380. So I don't want to spark a huge debate about 380s or 9mm, because honestly, people will sit there for days in the comment sections talking about, oh, there's 380 this, 9mm that, and then you get the 40s and the 45s, and it just turns into a whole crap show. So I'm just going to kind of leave that there. Going back to the feel of the gun, if I grip this gun in my hand, it fits nicely. And you can see what I'm saying without the magazine in there. You can see how my pinky just doesn't quite come to the bottom of the gun. And that's why I like to have those extended magazines, because that little bit of plastic gives you that extra room that you need just for your pinky. It gives you that perfect full grip on this gun. And that is one of the things that I absolutely love about this firearm, is that little bit. My Ruger LCP had the same thing, and I love that, but this one's just even bigger. The fit is really nice in my hand. The other thing that's really nice about this gun is the recoil. They've done a really nice job of absorbing recoil. So when you're at the range and you're firing it, it doesn't hurt your hand as much. I mean, if you put 1,000 rounds down range, any pistol's really going to hurt your hands. There's been a few guns in the past that I've fired that leave the webbing of your hand sore after you're shooting all day, just because you're absorbing a lot of the recoil. Whereas this gun's been designed with nice internal springs that kind of counteract a lot of that recoil, and you can shoot longer without being in pain. Accuracy is also great with this gun. You can see on the back little white dots there that make it really easy to see and line up your sights. I know there's a lot of modifications you can do for this. You can change colors and you can add on all sorts of other stuff. Again, this video is not really about that. This is kind of like out of the box what you get, but it's bright enough that you can see easily in lower and brighter light conditions. I've never really had any issue getting this thing lined up, and overall the whole fit and feel is really nice. I like this gun because it is a mid-size gun. It's not as small as an LCP, but it's not as big as a full-size gun like a Glock 22 or something. But overall, it's a really great gun. For self-protection, I like having the 9. I carried 380s for years, but when I saw this gun, I really kind of fell in love with it. It fits nicely in my hand. It shoots nicely. It still fits in my pocket. You get the extra 2 rounds compared to the LCP. I know there's newer versions of the LCP. I think that it holds more ammunition now. But I like the look and feel of this gun, and I like the 9mm over the 380s. This is probably my preferred carry gun as of late. It always changes as stuff comes out, newer technology comes out, and they always change stuff. But I mean, the basic function of a gun has remained the same for a long time. But overall, great value. I actually picked these up when they were on sale. They were super cheap, and I wasn't even in the market for it. And I just saw one. I was like, you know what? I really like this. It was a great price. I forget exactly what it was, but I got it a couple years ago. I wasn't even paying attention. I didn't realize that the first one I got had the extra safety on it. So once I got home, I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, crap. I really don't like that. So I had to pick up a second one without it. Again, like I said, it's more of a personal preference. I actually have a couple of friends that don't buy guns without that extra piece, and then I've got more that don't buy them with it. Either way, no matter what you choose, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what suits you best. Overall, that's the basics of the gun. I don't think there's too much else that I didn't cover. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't cover. I didn't go into tearing it apart. If you guys want to see the teardown video and how to clean this thing, that will be in a separate video, so check the description for that, or maybe I'll have a card in the corner that you can click on. They're really not that hard to break down. And if you guys have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments. And again, I'm not a professional, so if I say anything incorrect, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I like to learn too. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do me a big favor, subscribe, and press that like button if you like the video. Check out some of the other content on my channel. Until next time, thanks for watching.